that was the theory and how it happened. But again, you come to the problem with Paul and James, who would have no reason to want to have this, no reason to have this new experience of grace, right? And this theory suggests that this experience comes after they became Christians. So we have to first explain how they even in the first place became Christians before they can have this experience, right? So again, this is not a very strong alternative theory. And over here, maybe some of you might give pause and say, hey, Yuta, you picked like two of the most ridiculous alternative theories. And then of course you will win the argument, right? So firstly, I'm going to say that I did not pick these alternative theories, right? N.T. Wright picked these alternative theories. And I'm going to say why they appear so weak today is because once we've understood the methodology of understanding things from a first century Jewish lens, that is the reason why we can assess these as very weak theories, because now we have the correct methodology of assessing them. Imagine if you did not put on that first century Jewish lens and a modern lens, and you say, hey, it was cognitive dissonance. I think many people would be convinced, yeah, it could be cognitive dissonance. That sounds reasonable to me, right? But again, when you put on a first century Jewish lens, it seems highly, highly improbable. So what I'm suggesting here is, if we look at alternative explanations and they all fail, then the empty tomb and Jesus's appearances now become necessary, because it seems to be the only reasonable and probable explanation for the rise of early Christian belief. Right? So if I've managed to show that the empty tomb and Jesus's appearances are not just sufficient, but necessary, then I think we can conclude that Jesus's bodily resurrection is by far the best explanation. And I use this terminology just to be academically honest. We cannot hit 100% certainty, but I have to say that the evidence would be pointed pretty strongly, right? So again, just a quick recap. We have the rise of early Christian belief. How did that happen? Would it have been naturally man-made? After understanding the first century Jewish understanding of what resurrection means, it seems quite difficult. They would have no motivation to become Christians. Something significant must have happened, and the two most prominent conditions were the empty tomb and Jesus's appearances. Alternative theories that try to explain one and ignore the other would not work, because just one of this would not be sufficient. There would be an insufficient condition. So alternative theories that tries to take one and ignore the other fail to explain this and has to be rejected. So they must have occurred together for it to be sufficient. And if we explore further alternative theories to explain the rise of early Christianity, and that exploration tells us that they all fail, then it seems to me that the empty tomb and Jesus's appearances have to be necessary. And therefore, we can conclude that the resurrection did indeed happen. And that is the reason why a first century Jew would even consider converting to Christianity, because something strange really happened. A resurrection that happened at a time where they were not expecting, and a resurrection that was bodily, that fit their understanding of what it means for resurrection. Right. So this is what I summarized. So I'm just going to conclude by saying, like I said, historical studies does not help us reach 100% certainty. So it's not a walk in the park, but we can still get to a state where the gap is small enough for us to take that leap of faith to believe that it happens. I'm not going to pretend that faith is not required. In fact, we can go on and we can talk about how faith is required in many, many circumstances, right? Even in how we live in our daily lives. So what we're trying to achieve today is to show that our leap is perfectly reasonable, right? We can take this short leap.